Hey friends. So I had in the midst of this vacation-tastic period of the last week and a half, it's going on 2 weeks, I had a session of piano teacher training with Madeline and the other two fantastic musicians who are doing this course with me. That was yesterday, and a bunch of really interesting stuff came up. I guess there are kind of two things that were my takeaways from it, and they're really kind of separate departments of the work, but I'll try and, as often happens with this post and with this kind of reflection, I start thinking that they're not related, and then by the end of thinking it through and unpacking it, I find, oh, actually these two unrelated elements in my life really are quite related. In fact, they're each like giant flashing neon signs pointing at each other, or pointing together at the same thing. So we'll see if that happens. Maybe it will. But the first thing that showed up, and it kind of was an outgrowth of some of the practice I was doing leading up to the session, but I had the really distinct sensation both while working as a student in the session yesterday and also while working as a teacher, that, we talk about music as a language, which is a very apt description of music. But even within music, I had started just the day before, a day or two before, as I was practicing, getting ready, I had started doing certain aspects of the work that I've talked about probably several times on this post that, that are an outgrowth of the work I'm doing with Madeline, one of which is singing the notes that I'm playing. Simple as that. Singing the right hand part, singing the left hand part. If there are multiple, if it's not single note counterpoint, singing all the different voices of a chord or of a harmonic sequence. And it has this incredible effect of making the passage easier to play. It's this bizarre thing where and I still, even now, even having had this experience over and over and over again, it's amazing to me that if I'm playing a passage and I'm having trouble with it, if I sing it, if I sing all the different parts, as if by magic, it becomes technically easier to play. My hand all of a sudden finds the notes. All of a sudden connects the lines. It's weird. It's like borderline superstitious level, cause and effect, because it's like I continuously, even after all this time, I continuously will be struggling with something, and I'll think, oh, I should sing it. And then I'll think, that's not gonna work. Give me a break. I don't need to sing this. The problem is I can't get my fourth finger to get over that black key in time, or I'll boil it down. It'll feel like I know what the problem is, and the problem is technical. And luckily I've done this enough times now that I just go, okay, well, whatever. I'm just going to sing it anyway, and I do it, and then poof, as if by magic, all the technical problems are solved, and the sound is leading. And so that's one element of the work that I've done recently. Another one is playing passages that are difficult, and especially large leaps that are difficult on the piano, with my eyes closed. I'll just, and this has a little bit more of kind of like an obvious correlation to the experience of playing, because I'll close my eyes and I'll just map. It's like I start to create this internal map of exactly how it feels in my arm to play the low note, and exactly how it feels in my arm to play the high note or the chord or whatever, and just kind of map it out with my eyes closed. It works better with my eyes closed than with my eyes open, because with my eyes open, my visual field is still engaged, and to some degree it's taking my attention. Whereas if I close my eyes, it's like I go into the sensation of the movement. That's it. That's all that my awareness is doing. Of course, there's also the listening component, but I get much more connected to that felt sense component. And this is what I was doing when this insight flashed through for me, which is all the different components of playing a piece are like separate languages. That physical sensation component is like its own language. I could have a philosophy of piano playing that focused exclusively on that, and that was all about just feeling in space where this touch begins and this touch begins and this touch ends, and that I could do a whole module on just that language of the music, that aspect of the music. Same thing with the singing, same thing with the sound, that kind of like tracking the pitches, tracking the phrasing in my voice. It's its own language. And so what showed up was this odd kind of like a unfolding, I guess, of the different elements of my practice and perceiving them as individual languages in their own right. And that really, I found that helpful, because then it would also help me identify when I'm playing, like let's say I'm practicing a little bit with my eyes closed, right? Then I start playing the passage again with my eyes open, just kind of more like as I would if I were performing it, and something gets in the way, I started to be able to identify, oh, it's because I can't feel it. It's that physical felt sense language that I need to, the pronunciation of that needs attention. So I'd go in and do that work. Or it was like, I'm not hearing. When I get to this place, I'm not hearing. So it's that language. I mean, I'm kind of emphasizing the language term as far as describing these elements. They're really elements of the music. But really thinking of them as their own whole domain and as their own thing, their own language, was helpful to me. And I think it speaks to this thing that I keep learning. This is something that did come up in my in the session yesterday, and I think I just figured out how these things are connected. But learning is a process of increasing differentiation. In other words, the separate elements of music I'm increasingly aware of them as separate elements, and an increasing holism. In other words, perceiving the whole of the entire process, the entire practice, the playing of the piece. But it's this weird, it's like awareness doesn't grow in one direction, like this, just going one way. Awareness grows almost like a ball, or like something that reaches out in all directions. So in other words, as I'm becoming more aware of individual details, of components, of smaller and smaller components, because isolating the fact that with my eyes closed, this felt sense of a leap has a hiccup in it, has an obstacle in it, is a matter of really focusing on one tiny little aspect of what I'm doing. there's any number of other ways I could approach the issue, but going into these individual elements is a process of differentiation. And we can resist that process if we think, I just need to get the whole. I just need to be because one of the things that happens is that when we do that, resistance shows up, and the resistance is sometimes in the form of, I just am ignoring everything else. If I do that, if I put my focus there, I can't keep everything else in mind. And this is actually something that also came up in the session yesterday. We were talking about what to do if a student is in resistance, what to do if someone is in resistance. And basically, Madeline said, all you can do is be present, listen, and be okay with not having any answers. And that is something that I know is a particular challenge for me. When I see someone go into resistance, I have this tendency to want to say, oh no, you don't need to be in resistance. It's okay. Look, here's why. Everything's fine. Or this is something that I'm just identifying in my own teaching and in my own approach, I think. And there's an element that I think I was being encouraged to embrace, which is not knowing, not even analyzing. I mean, analysis is a huge part of practicing piano and teaching piano, but there's also an aspect of teaching piano that has nothing to do with analysis, and it's just sitting with the emotional experience of someone's resistance and making that okay. It reminds me of Brene Brown talking about being willing to sit with her children in a dark room, alone, or just the two of them, and not try to make them feel better. Because if we can actually do that, it teaches the child that it's okay not to feel great. It's not that we don't want them to feel better. Every fiber of our being is going to want them to feel better, want them to feel okay. But letting them know that just because they don't feel good right now, there's nothing wrong, and no one is going to try and change them. That's a huge gift to be able to give. And it's very similar to teaching piano. It's a matter of allowing someone to be where they are, allowing someone to not take a certain step. And, first of all, not taking that as some kind of reflection of us as a teacher and needing the teacher in us to be successful in the moment of helping them overcome it or whatever. That's kind of the ego layer we have to be able to get through. But then even beyond that, there's the element of really sitting with their discomfort and their resistance and not letting that activate us, not letting that provoke our response. Because if we give permission to be wherever we are, if we give someone permission to be exactly where they are today, not to help them get somewhere else that's better, but be where they are, that's really, in Chogyam Trungpa's words, the action of non-aggression. We're not imposing what we think they should feel, where we think they should be, how we think they might be happier or better or feel more successful or whatever. We just let them be. So those were kind of the two big elements, and they're certainly related. But a bunch of good stuff came through. So the journey continues. Thanks for watching, folks. Appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you tomorrow.